So hi everyone, Rabbi Yisroel Bernath here. I'm here with Fishel Goldig. Is it okay, Fishel, if we take off our masks since we're 6 feet apart?
Absolutely.
Okay, just want to make sure. We want everyone today to be affected, not infected.
All right.
So we have a very special program for you today. And our goal with this program is to just inspire you and to make you feel a little bit of Yom Kippur, even though we're in these unprecedented times. We want to feel a little Yom Kippur. So what we're going to do is Fishel and I are going to talk the Book of Life. We call this Sealed in the Book of Life. So we'll talk the Book of Life. And then Fishel, since you're a chazan, here we call you Chazan Fishel. Since you're a chazan, so you'll sing something Yom Kippur-like for us. Is that okay?
Sure.
And then afterwards, we're going to talk about the war. We're going to talk about the Holocaust, the Ghetto. And then at the end of our program, from what I understand, you have a special treat. And that is you have some songs from the Ghetto that you can sing for us.
We'll try and do our best.
Okay. So we call this Sealed in the Book of Life because the Book of Life is something that I think that so many of us are thinking about right now. It's before Yom Kippur, and we're thinking, my gosh, what a year it's been, and how fortunate we are that we're alive. I mean, unfortunately, so many lives have been taken this year. People that we know, people that we don't know. Somehow we've all been affected by this. So if I were to say this year, right now, with all of your experience, everything that's happened to you in your life, what does sealed in the Book of Life mean for you?
Well, to start with, you go to the Master of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, and you see when it says the Rosh Hashanah Yichasenu Yom Kippur Yichasenu, which means that they're writing your life and when it ends and how it ends. So one of the things that says who is going to die, who is going to live, how are they going to die? Is it going to be by fire, by water, and so on? Different kinds of things. But one of the things that when I was looking at it, it caught my eye, and it says, Umi b'magefa. Magefa is a pandemic. That's
Wow.
what it is. Am I correct?
Yes.
That's what it is. The magefa is really, it's a pandemic. So when I came to this, it caught my eye, and I said, wow, maybe they're writing up there in heaven, and God is sitting there and with his angels, and they're writing my story, or the end of the story. And that's in effect what he does to all people on earth. So this is just one thing that caught my eye.
Wow.
The other thing is when you come to an old age. I'm not young anymore, but just in case you want. Just in case you wonder.
You look very young.
Well, we'll pass that. So you have to start thinking about the reckoning of what you've done in your life. In my case, how I survived as a child, as a young boy, the things I went through, because, as you know, I'm a survivor. And then how I lived my life since I was liberated, and the different countries that I went through. And I think about all these things from time to time, and also, but particularly in this time of the year, and also my life here in Canada, how I managed to bring up a big family of children and grandchildren. And I've been successful. I find that thanks to Hashem, I've been successful in what I've been done. And we'll talk about that a little later on.
For sure. Tell me about Yom Kippur as a child. Before, do you have any memories before the
Yes.
war of Yom Kippur? Of
Yes.
Rosh Hashanah?
Yes. I remember I was 5 years old. Well, the first you have to remember is all my life, as a child, I can't remember a Shabbat or a holiday or, particularly Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, that I wasn't in some kind of a shul. I say some kind because I'm talking about also the Ghetto, which we'll talk later on. But I can remember Rosh Hashanah and Kippur. My father would take me by the hand and we'd go to shul. In the town where I was born, which was a small town called Milnica, which was Polish-Ukrainian at that time, before the war. Today it is Ukraine. So that's where I was born, and we had, in our town there were about somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 Jews, small town. And then my father took me to shul, and I remember he would push me to the bima to hear the shofar, So this is a memory that I have when I was 5 years old.
Was it a big shul, a shtibel?
No, it wasn't a shtibel. It was a shul. Not very, if I can remember that far, but it wasn't a very big shul. But there were lots of people in it, and so.
Wow. And then once the war broke out, you spent time in the ghetto.
Well, not immediately, because in 1939, when the Germans, there was a pact made, as you know, between the Russians and and Hitler, so they were going to invade Poland, including that part where I was born, because it was Polish territory at that time. So they in 1939, both of these big countries, the Nazis and the communists, they invaded Poland. The Germans from in Poland in the west, and the Russians in the east. And so in 1939, we got the Russian army first, and of course then after a little while, the Russian administrators came into our place, also the KBG and all the people that run the country. And so we were there in that place with them, not too long, but in that area that we were, because that's another story, but in that area, so we were in my town and in another town about 30, 40 kilometers away. So we were under the rule of the Russian, Soviet, communist rule. And of course, they did allow us to go to synagogue, to go to shul. So I can't remember. Yes, I went to shul for Rosh Hashanah in both towns, in Yanitsa, and there's another one that we had to move. Story on that. We had to move away. We were there for a year and a half, and then returned. But so we went to shul in Yanitsa. I remember that, say shul. Very Orthodox, of course. And then we went to that they throw us out from our city. And then we went to the other one, and there was another shul, a little smaller, if I recall. But we went to shul anyways.
What was the name of the other town?
Yezhezhane.
Yezhezhane.
Don't even try it.
Say that 6 times fast. Yezhezhane. Okay.
Yes. So I went there, of course, with my father, and then my mother, of course.
Wow.
For Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur.
And then, what year did you end up being put in the ghetto?
Okay, I was in that little town for a year and a half. Then they allowed us to go back, and we'll talk about that in the story. When we came back, about 3 months later or so, the Germans invaded our part as well. The agreement, the pact was broken. They invaded us and they chased the Russians out. They occupied that whole province, let's say, that whole sector, on their way into Russia, because we were just on the border of Russia. So we had the Germans came in. We were with them in that town for approximately 3, maybe 4 months. And then they commanded that all the Jews in our town and all the surrounding towns and villages where Jews lived had to leave and go to a ghetto. It was about 60, 70 kilometers away, into that ghetto in a city called Borsov. Borsov. It was a bigger city than ours. And they made a ghetto there, and basically in the sector where Jews lived before. And they didn't take the whole sector, Jewish sector, they just took part of it. And they brought all these people, thousands, I don't know how many, but it was a lot of people, and they brought them into that ghetto. We were not allowed to assemble in prayer or assemble at any time. So if we went to shul, it was against the law. And of course, the Nazis had one answer. If you did not follow the rules, they shot you on the spot, and that was that.
And you remember seeing people being shot?
I remember seeing some people being shot. Yes.
So it was very real in your mind that.
I also remember seeing people in the street. My little friends. I was 8 years old at the time when I got into the ghetto, and then we were there for a year and 3 months or 4 months. And I remember my friends dead on the street.
People you knew.
My small kids, 8, 9 years old, 10 years old. But this, we're going to talk about the ghetto later. I just wanted to tell you. So, what I remember about the Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is, of course, a lot of the people didn't follow the rules. In my case, my father and a few of the other people organized. There was one person who had one room, a big room, sort of. He lived in a bigger room. Most rooms were small. He had a little bigger room, and they made a minyan there. There were, if I remember correctly, maybe 20 people, 30 people, maybe at most. Maybe not even.
There wasn't very much social distancing there.
There was no room for that. And I remember going with my father in the ghetto, and they just had a tefillin. And what I do remember is everybody was hurrying. The tefillin, let's go, because it was very dangerous. Had they found it by chance, we'd all be dead.
Wow.
So you had to do it very quickly.
Wow.
Okay? But they took a chance, and they did it. And we weren't the only ones. I think there were other groups, that were doing that as well. But it was dangerous.
But at the time when you were a child, did you know how dangerous it was to be doing Rosh Hashanah?
Oh, yes. You know what? We knew all the dangers. You see, Rabbi, an 8, 9-year-old became an adult because of the circumstances. The fear and the instinct to live kicked in. And you knew what they could do. And we'll talk about it later, about that part.
Wow. So you've lived through the most challenging time that I know of, at least in recent history. You've lived through the Holocaust. Now, fast forward, you're now living through a pandemic. What kind of feeling or experience are you going into Yom Kippur this year with?
Well, when I was young, it was different. When I was a young man, I felt that I'm a survivor. And although when we came here, it was tough going. Nobody was killing anybody, but to just live, my parents were working. I had to go to yeshiva, and they wouldn't let me work. My father said, "No way, you're going to school." So there were difficult times when we came here, but we were very grateful to be here. With all the anti-Semitism was there.
When you came, there was anti-Semitism here.
Yes, absolutely. I don't know. Everywhere we went so far in my life, there was anti-Semitism. And there is almost in every country. It's ingrained. So we had to make do. When we came here to Montreal and go back to the shuls, my father found we are living on Laval and Duluth. If that gives you an idea. And the shul was on St. Lawrence, not too far from Montreal, between just near Montreal. And upstairs there was a shtibel, but a big shtibel, probably about half the size of this. And my father went there because it was his kind of people. I believe I told you that.
Mostly survivors, right?
I'm sorry?
It was mostly survivors.
No.
Just Montrealers.
Montrealers. There were survivors there. There were several that I remember. Maybe there were more that I never asked whether they were. So that's when that's where we were in this shtibel. And then, of course, when with my parents, my father, my brother, always went over there. After that, when I finally got married, and I was into music and chazonas, also studied voice, and then I started to sing in different choirs. Started with the Shar Shamayim. I sang there in the choir. And then the Adat Israel that was in Outremont before they moved. I spent many years there. I think one or two other synagogues that I sang in the choir. Oh yeah, Shalom Aboker.
You made your rounds.
Yes. So, and then when I studied chazonas, with a very great man. At that time, he was probably my age that I am today. But he was a very good belt filler. And he knew Nusach like nobody else in the world. Every little thing. So I studied with him for about a year. And
what was his name?
Goodman.
Goodman.
It's okay. His first name. Okay. So,
Cantor Goodman.
Yeah. But he was never a Cantor. He was about.
Yeah.
The one thing he always told me, he says, I don't care how big a chazan you'll ever be, but perish amilus. When you sing, let the people know what you're saying. Let them hear. Don't cover it. Don't let them know the words that you're saying. That stuck with me all these years.
Wow.
And then I started to do chazonas. First, we lived in Chamonix for many years. My kids grew up there. I was a member of Young Israel, but they needed a chazan for the high holidays. There was a Shar Shalom. Is it Shar Shalom?
Yeah, Shar Shalom.
Yeah. Which was conservative.
Yes.
And basically, I ended up coming from a religious home, a very religious home, singing in conservative shuls. I was there for 2 or 3 years. Then I sang that show, and then I sang 15 years in Shar Zion, and 16 years in the Shar Tzedek, like that, And so I did a lot of that. I never wanted to take a stella, a position as cantor. That was not for me.
You always wanted to be just a volunteer cantor, a lay cantor.
No, I was a professional. I was getting paid for it.
Okay.
I was getting paid.
Oh, okay.
Paid well. I've had many people that asked me why I don't become a chazan. It's not my thing. It's not a job for a Jewish boy.
It's not a job for a good Jewish boy.
That's right. No, I didn't like the politics of it.
Right.
Having been to many shuls in the past, in the choir and all that, and hearing the politics that goes on, I decided it's not for me. And so I was in business for many years, almost 40, between 40 and 50. So
doing a different kind of chazanik in your business.
Yes. I became, in the last 35 years, that's when I became, as you say, another kind of chazan. I was an auctioneer.
A very good auctioneer. At least I've seen you in shul doing the auctions, but I can't imagine if you can do that with the Jews in shul, what you've done, then you definitely whatever else you're auctioning.
Well, yeah, it was fine. I made a good living. My kids went through school. Of course, they started. They were all in Jewish school always, or on the Torah, and then Herzliya, and of course, then they went to university. All of them went to university, different universities. And so today I have a big gang that comes usually, not this particular holiday, unfortunately.
Is this the first time?
No, the first time was Pesach.
Right, I'm saying, but this is the first year.
Yeah. Usually I have anywhere between 18 and 20 people at the Seder. And the same amount, if not more, because now there is also there's wives and sisters and their kids. So I could probably have 30, but my house wouldn't take it. I didn't have a room to put it in.
I know the past few years your Seder you put it in the basement, but
Always.
I know I don't.
That was the only way to do it, to have the whole gang in.
I remember walking by your house Pesach night.
Yes.
This has got to be 12 or 13 years ago.
Right.
And I remember seeing you were upstairs. And I remember the gang. I had this picture in my mind of the Seder. It was unbelievable, the scene. And I remember they were singing. I could even hear the faint singing.
So let me tell you how that worked. When I remarried, okay, with Lorna.
Right.
Lorna has a family as well.
Right.
So what we had to do is I made one Seder
For Fishel's
my
family,
gang.
and one for Lorna's family.
That's right. So there were not that many, so we could have it upstairs.
Ah, okay.
Upstairs we could accommodate up to 12, 13, give that little push.
I have this memory
Yes.
of maybe it's got to be at least 12 or 13 years ago, walking by
Yes.
and seeing your Seder.
Very,
Beautiful
very
scene.
possible, yeah. So that's how we worked since I met Lorna. Look, it was only fair.
Yeah, of course. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Mishpocha, mishpocha.
That's right. So That's how I say this.
So I think this is a good segue into our next part. And we'd like you to give us some chazonis, some cantorial inspiration
For Yom Kippur.
Yom Kippur.
Okay.
So I'm going to put my mask back on. You don't have to, because I will, because I'm standing up.
All right.
Okay. He's just getting something. Ladies and gentlemen, Cantor Fishel.
So, we will start with, of course, with Kol Nidre. And this Kol Nidre brings us in to the whole atmosphere of Yom Kippur. Kol nidrei ve'yasarei u'shavuei v'charomei v'konomei v'kinosei v'chinu Dindarna Udishtabana Udiacharimna Udasarna Al Nafshatana Miyom Kippurim Ad Yom Kippurim Haba Aleinu Lehetova Bechulot Icharotna Vahon Kulhon Yehonesh Sharan Shavikim Shavikim B'Teilin u'B'Talin Lo Sharirin V'lo Kayamin Nidrana Nidrana Lo Nidrei V'Yasarana Lo Esarei ושבועתנה לא שבועות. Now, I would like to do something that in the Machzor comes immediately after Kol Nidre, but it's a favorite of mine because it, and I would like to read you first the English because it's very important for me, and it says. And may the entire congregation of the children of Israel, as well as the stranger among you who dwells among you, be forgiven for all the people, for all the people acted unintentionally, not aware of what they were doing. And I think this business of the stranger is very peculiar to me. I don't know if the rabbi will agree with me on this, but when it says about the stranger among you, I feel another way about it. Jews live all over the world, everywhere, every country that I have visited, and let's just say most countries, there are Jews there. And I feel that they're talking about the stranger, meaning all the people where Jews are, it's a community, one community, and other people are living there with us. So when we ask forgiveness, because we didn't do it intentionally, we mean the world of the other people and us together. So that's why I always thought that this was a very special way of saying that God will have to forgive many other people besides just the Jews. ונסלח לכל הדת בני ישראל ולגר הגר בתוכם כי לכל העם בשגגה ונסלח לכל הדת בני ישראל ולגר הגר בתוכם כי לכל העם בשגגה ונסלח לכל הדת בני ישראל ולגר הגר בתוכם כי לכל העם בשגגה.
Wow.
Okay.
You want to take another? Do you want to take a seat?
Yeah.
Or do you want to do another one?
Do you? No, if you want.
Whatever is good for you.
Well, we can do something in Nila. This is the beginning, and do something at the end.
Maybe at the end we'll do at the end, after the songs from the Ghetto.
Oh, you can do that too.
Okay, so
Sure.
let's get you back sitting down.
All right.
Wow. Just set this up over here.
I have the privilege of with the permission of Chazan Tzvi, who's the Chazan in this synagogue, who invited me to do the beginning. We did exactly what we did today. So I'm looking forward very much to be in the under the canopy, sort of, in the tent outside. Hopefully we'll be able to work there, because it's going to be extremely cold. Like they said,
Hashem is going to make it as. Look,
I'm sure.
the Jewish people started off in tents, and now we're back to tents.
Right.
This is our origin.
We move from tent to tent. That's right.
So we're back to our origins, back to the beginnings.
Right.
Speaking of back to the beginnings, I thought that being that Yom Kippur is always a time of reflection, I thought it would be a really good opportunity to talk about the Holocaust, about your story, your experience. I'm not sure where to start. I've had the opportunity to read your book, an amazing book. I've had the opportunity to hear you tell your story a few times. Obviously, there's some incredible moments in your life. I'd like to maybe start, I want to start from somewhere in the middle. And my first question to you today, with regards to your story, is I know that you lived in the forest.
Mm-hmm.
How long were you in the forest?
A little over 3 months.
3 months in the forest.
Yes. Now, I got to tell you about that. I just sort of thought about it. There was a problem of getting a minyan, because when we escaped from the ghetto, eventually we ended up in the forest. That's a whole story, but I'll make it very short. My father was in the forest before us, and finally we found him, and we were together. So myself and my parents. But I do remember one incident. First of all, let me just tell you how it was. We were in groups of 10, 15. I don't think it even went to 20, but maybe 20. And they were in different parts of the forest. And the reason for that is because the Germans knew that a lot of people from the ghetto escaped. When we cut the wire of the ghetto and people were running out, which is my father with my uncle, and we stayed for another day or two. And so we separated and so on. That's a whole story. But finally, when we got there, we were asking all the different groups occasionally when we passed by, because we were moving around, if they knew where Goldig is. Somebody said, "Yeah, I know him. Yeah, he was from a little village just outside our town." And he said, "Yeah, he's with us." So my father finally came to our group, stayed with ours, and we were a family again. But I remember one particular I don't remember going like having a minyan for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Again, I was 9 years old. But I do remember one thing. One of the men had yortzeit. He had yortzeit, I don't know, his father, his mother, or whatever. And he was looking desperately to make a minyan.
In the forest.
In the forest. Yes. And so we didn't have enough men in our unit. It was mainly, there was a lot of women, so, and not all the men wanted to do this. And we should talk about that, and I'll tell you why. And so we had to, he was running from one group to another group to get a few guys together, and finally made a minyan so he could say Kaddish.
I just don't understand. He's in the forest. He's running for his life in the forest.
Right.
And all he cares about is making a minyan for his yortzeit.
Right. Right.
Wow. Wow.
I remember it because my father, of course, need a minyan. But I was only 9 years old at that. Come with me. So we stood there under a tree, and we couldn't make any kind of a structure, even out of leaves or branches, because the patrols were going always looking for Jews. So it was a very harsh time, because by that time it was coming fall, and there was a lot of rain and cold. But that thing I recall, from that time.
The reason why I wanted to start in the forest is because right now a lot of people have to be in quarantine.
Yes.
I mean, they're in quarantine in their warm house, thank God, with food and electricity, and
right.
But it's still a time of quarantine. It's very difficult for people.
A ghetto is a quarantine.
Right. So I was wondering, and after living 3 months in the forest, what is your advice for people during this time of being in quarantine? How do you survive it?
Look, I said a ghetto was a quarantine. The instinct to survive is so great that you will do anything and everything in order to live one more day, one more week, maybe one more month. You did whatever you had to do. That's just the instinct of the human being. He wants to live. And if we survive that, I know this is not pleasant, which is what we have now, that you have to be for 2 weeks quarantine. Yeah, okay. But it's not like anybody's going to come and kill you tomorrow morning. Okay? It's not pleasant by any means. I can't go out, you can't do anything, but you're living and you're eating well. You can still eat. You can still sleep in a decent bed.
Shower.
You can shower and freely and so on.
You didn't have a change of clothes, right?
Yes, I had something. Yeah, I don't remember it, but I know I had, because I had different pants.
Okay.
My mother always looked after me. So
she brought with her a change of clothes for you.
She had everything.
Wow.
I don't know where she kept it, because we were not allowed to take a lot of stuff out of the house. But she managed.
We're in the forest, and my boychik has to look his best.
Yeah. No, that was not the problem. The problem was food when we were there. But we'll talk about this later.
So let's talk about it.
Okay.
Let's I'm going to leave it up to you. Where do you want to start?
Well, we're in the forest. So, and I said to you before that not everybody was interested in making a minyan. You see, there were two kinds. There were two kinds of people in the ghetto. And generally in survivors. There were very religious people who turned and became totally unreligious to the point where they wouldn't even attend when somebody needed a minyan for Kaddish.
God forgot about us. That's the end.
It was that. And then there were the others. Probably more became very religious.
Which means they were in a crisis and they turned to
In
God.
other words, they were not religious when they were before the war, whatever, and became religious.
During the war.
Yes. During the ghetto, or during when they were in some that were in concentration camps.
Why do you think that was?
It's the way it affected your life. Look, in the forest, that small group of us, there were people that didn't make it out of the ghetto, but like families. So the man, the guy, the husband, made it out. They ended up in the forest. And his wife with 2-3 kids or whatever he had, perished days before. And the way they thought about it, why is God doing this? Why is he doing it? To me, I never did anything bad. I didn't do anything wrong, which was my thing that I have in the book. And that was just a feeling. Why? There was no answer. Why? Let me go back to where I start my book. My first realization of what anti-Semitism is when I went to school, grade 1. Was under the Russian occupation. At that time, 1939, I was 6 years old. You had to go to school. And a bunch of kids, a little bit older than me. I was going back home after school. I was going home. They grabbed me. They beat the hell out of me, beat me up, threw me on the ground, and ran away. So I was crying, and as crying, I ran to the house, to our house, and I went in and I told my mother what happened. She said, "What's going on? What happened?" I told her. Because in addition to beating me up, they called me all kinds of dirty names, including dirty Jew. You are a dirty Jew. So I came to the house, I told my mother what happened, and I told them, in addition, they called me dirty Jew. I said to her, why? I've never done anything wrong. Let's go back to the forest. So a lot of people, a lot of survivors just wanted to make it. If God can do this to them, that was their interpretation, then I don't want to have anything to do with God.
What about the flip side?
The flip side were also people that became religious.
But why?
Because of the thing that the will, that God gave us the will of being good or being terrible. So there are terrible people around, okay? And they do the killing. We cannot judge what God is doing, how He is working, His way of doing things, why. There's many whys, and there's no answers. You have to make it the answer in your particular character and how you feel about it. And a lot of them said, we see the bracha and the klala. God told us about it.
You see the blessing and the curse.
Correct. The blessing and so we must expect the curse to appear at some part, because we are not always as good as God would like us to be.
And they saw the Shoah as the curse.
That's the way they thought that. And therefore they became religious.
Wow. Can I ask you a personal question?
Sure.
Do you believe in God?
Yes.
You do?
I do.
How? After everything you've seen, after the Holocaust, after having to, and you'll tell the story, which is an unbelievable story, and I'm sorry that I'm doing a spoiler here.
No, you're not.
After being under a mattress and a Nazi or an SS not finding you under a mattress.
Right.
After going through the Holocaust, how can you still believe in God?
I get that question from the many hundreds of groups that I talk about my story, in particular from school children, from high school children, and it's sometimes also from when I go to university and I speak about my story. And they ask the two things that they talk about at all times. I get those questions. One is, where was God in Auschwitz? And the second one is, do you believe in God?
Wow, so it's a common question that you get.
Common question. I say I do. When they ask me if I believe in God, I do. But to tell you the truth, I still have questions.
So you believe in God with questions?
With questions that I don't think my generation of people will be able to answer. Maybe some other day, maybe Mashiach, and will be able to answer the questions that we have. Because we are not at the point in our history to be able to have the kind of brain power that is needed to understand what God is doing. I don't know if it makes sense what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
So we're not at that level. So we must think that perhaps God has a reason for what he's doing.
But-
Bracha and Klala.
And it's funny because I think that I've been getting these questions a little more now, and I'm
Yes.
asking this to you because it's something people are thinking about, and I'm gonna make it a little more specific.
Yeah.
How can a good God allow such evil to exist?
I have another way of putting it. God is God. Good or bad, that you experience doesn't change the way God is running this world. Yes, he gave us the will, what we want to choose, right? And we choose to be good or we choose to be bad. You can become a Nazi, or you can become a Holy Spirit, a Rabbi for the Lubavitch group. Okay, and for good, and for evil. Well, not the evil, but the other way, for the blessing and for the curse. So we should not be able to judge what he is doing because we are not in his level,
So
his level.
if I understand you correctly, you're saying that the Holocaust is the act of men. It's the act of Hitler. It's the act of individual people who chose
Correct.
to do evil,
Correct.
not God.
Correct.
Which means that free choice really exists.
Correct.
There must have been moments in while you were running, while you were whether it was I know some of the stories already. So
Right.
so there must have been moments in that time that you thought that was it, my life was over.
Oh, many times. Many times. Again, the fear, the anxiety that you have at that particular moment, that you think, that you think that this is it. You're going to die. In the next few seconds. Just gives you the strength to be able to say, all right, let me just go through this. Maybe I'll just move, or maybe I'll run over there, because this is not good. Under that tree is maybe better. Let's do something. Let's organize something. And you want to live, even in this horrible places that we were, with very little food and not even good drinking water. And talking the Ghetto. And you survived. We were, between the Ghetto and the forest, we were circling around in a field for at least a week and maybe more, because we couldn't keep time and so on. But it was at least a week. Okay, in the fields where the corn was growing very high, and we were hiding there. And we ate berries in the forest. We could find some of the men, including my father, would go out sometimes at night and cut down some corn, some wheat, little things, and we found berries there, and that's what we ate. For 8 days or more, my mother and I, that was because my father had separated. For 8 days, we were walking around in the fields, and we got lost. And we found a way.
Is there anything existential that goes through the mind of a 9-year-old during this time?
Again, what I told you before is an 8-9-year-old kid becomes a 29-year-old kid. He's no more a child. He knows the danger, the fear of being found and being killed. All children become in the ghetto. We had 8-9-year-olds that had lost their parents, or there are many children like that.
Orphans.
But they would find a way to survive. Because they were small, and because they wouldn't be found so fast, they were smuggling in the ghetto. How? If you had some money or some jewelry or something like that, you'd give it to the kid. The kid would go in through the wire, okay? Through the wire, he would exchange it for food and bring it to whoever gave him the money, and he would get like a commission, I guess you may call it. Yeah, had something to eat.
Commission was food.
Correct. Okay, and they survived. Some of them survived.
Was that the money in the ghetto food?
That was money that people had from before.
But what are they going to do with it?
That's right. They don't need it. Needed food. So they did this kind of thing. And they were 8, 9, 10 years old.
Wow.
That was going on.
So you can't look at them as an 8, 9, 10-year-old. You have to look at them as a 30-year-old.
Correct.
Because they already had gone through...
Correct. And when the pogrom, when the one-day killing started, because they had the Germans would do it on most holidays, Jewish holidays. They chose a day.
Wow.
To do that.
Right.
So they knew that they had to hide with all of us, with all the other people in the ghetto. So these kids knew that they had, they're starting to shoot, starting to kill. Oh, I better hide. And they used to come and hide in different places, wherever they could.
And it was specifically Jewish holidays.
A lot of it, a lot of the how should I say it? They call it in German Aktion, Action Day. It really was a killing day, massacre day, a pogrom, call it.
So
daily.
It could be everything was fine in the ghetto. I mean, fine, relatively speaking,
right?
Where people were just going about and trying to live.
Right.
And one day, everyone's hiding.
That's correct. They had come very early in the morning.
Did you know they were coming?
Well, we heard the shooting started. And should I tell you the story?
Please.
Okay. So everybody had to hide somewhere. And then we were in an apartment building, and we were looking for a place to hide. Prior to that, we did different hides. So finally, we had in our building, there was an engineer who devised something very special for us to hide. Outside, in the back of the building, there was a toilet, an outdoor toilet. By the way, they weren't as nice as the outdoor toilets here. Okay. So, and when you opened up the door to the toilet, there was a kind of a wooden platform okay, so that when you sat down, you wouldn't put your feet in the mud. Okay, so there was this wooden kind of a platform. What he did, he lifted that platform and he got all the men from the apartment to start digging. They made an opening and they were digging down, down, down until a certain level, and then they made it wider and longer and higher.
Where'd they put the dirt?
Huh?
Where'd they put the dirt?
Took it out and spread it out outside on the street or in different places. That wasn't easy.
No one saw them.
If they saw them, they weren't alive. So you had to do it. And these men took some time and they made this open, they were digging and made this thing. And the minute that we heard shooting in the morning, because they would come like 7 o'clock in the morning, we heard shooting. Everybody in the apartment building ran down to that where the toilet was, the opening was, and everybody went in there and stayed there till the end of the day when the shooting stopped.
How many people was that?
I want to say 40, most likely, maybe more. I was quite big.
Do you have any memories in the pit?
Yes. There was one memory in one day. Okay, so we made this, but we needed to breathe. So they made, so here you have, this thing where everybody was there. And we made on the side 2 holes sort of going towards the outside. And they put a kind of a netting on that opening, not big, maybe this size or a little bigger, okay? And that's gave us air to come in. But one day, that thing got blocked up and people couldn't breathe. In particular, there was also, believe it or not, a baby with us. And that baby was choking. So they got together and asked for volunteers, 2 volunteers, to go out and take the dirt or whatever that was blocked and move it away so we can have air again. But to go out in the middle of that pogrom that was going on was the chances of you getting seen and shot were the odds were with them, with the killers. But it had to be done because we would have a lot more dead. So 2 young guys, they volunteered. They went out, unblocked the 2 things. It was no big deal. It was just a little bit of crap, enough just to block that little netting that was, where they just unblocked it and we had air again.
And they came back. Wow.
So, as I said before to you, Rabbi, you had to do what you had to do. in order to survive. Whatever it took, you had to do your thing. When I told you, go back to the fields now, we were spotted because there was a little roadway in the fields that was a roadway for the farmers to get to their crops, to bring them in, or seed, or whatever they had to do. And we were being careful not to go. But one day we didn't. We came a little close to the road. And a bunch of kids, Ukrainian, 16, 17-year-olds, I would say. They saw us. And so they made a circle around us.
You and your mother?
Yes, me and my mother. They picked up stones and they were just pelting us from all sides at us.
They knew you were Jews.
The Jews looked different. They wore different clothes. This was very primitive Ukrainian people, you have to remember, with the white. Let me say, if you've seen in movies, for instance, in Mexico, how some of the people that lived in the small villages with all white kind of shirts and pants, but the Jews wore Western clothes. Well, that was just one way. But also they saw we didn't look like that. And they recognized us because everybody knew that a lot of Jews had run out of the ghetto in the community. So they figured that out, and then they started pelting us. My mother was banging them up, don't do this. We've never done anything bad to you. Why are you doing this? And you want to know. The farmer that owned that piece of land where this was happening saved us. He came over, a very good guy, and he chased them away. And that's how we survived, because my mother always told me that those guys were, with the throwing of stones, they would have killed us. They would have stoned us if it wouldn't have been for this guy.
Do you remember the name of the farmer?
Never found them again.
Really? And you looked for him?
Yes. But we were going around in a big, huge area of all fields with corn growing high and different kinds of things. Could not find him. We didn't know his name. Never told us his name. But he took us to his house, and we were bleeding, both my mother and I. So he gave us some bandages and washed us up, told us to wash up, gave us something to eat. After not eating much for 8 or 10 days, and then showed us the way. Go, you see, go this way, then turn left, and you'll be in the forest. Okay?
Wow.
So these are moments that you cannot forget. But we had to do what we had to do. So to come back to what you're telling me about being quarantined, I still remember the feeling. Except that mine was a little bit much stronger than the average quarantine we have in this country or any country. And so we survived. We survived because we wanted to survive. You see, to tell you the truth, there were some people that really didn't want to live anymore. After things, people that lost their children and their wife, and they were never the same afterwards. I had my first wife's cousin, the man that was in 3 or 4 camps, concentration camps. He was in Auschwitz, he was in Buchenwald, he was from one place to the other. And each one was worse than the other one. He lost his wife, 3 children. 2 or 3. Whatever. He came to Montreal, and he met a cousin of my ex-wife, and he started another life. But I can tell you, he was never the same.
Broken man.
He would wake up at night screaming. By the way, Lorna tells me that from time to time, I do that too. Not screaming, but talking, shaking. I don't know if she tells me the truth.
But you don't have any conscious feelings like that?
No. And she wakes me up and it's gone. But, so he was never the same. And he was a very nice fellow, guy, a learned guy, not religious, but came from a religious home.
Mm-hmm. I'm just checking the camera. Yeah.
So this was and he never went to religion again. I couldn't speak to him about God or about synagogue or about anything like that. Didn't want to hear about it.
So he was one of those.
Yes.
And you can't question it. After
No.
going through that, losing your whole family, you can't question that.
Correct. Not only and he lost his parents and the immediate other family, the cousins and aunts and uncles, and everybody perished.
Wow.
So again, we come to the same story. You stop at one question, and that's why. And you can interpret it either way.
Do you ever think the opposite? Do you ever think, why was I so lucky to survive when so many others didn't?
That's, it's really, I'm very happy that you brought that question up, because I never thought about it when I was young. But now, in the last years, as I am growing a little older,
A little bit.
I do ask, why did I survive and all these other people that I was with in the ghetto didn't? Why? Why did the kids that I was playing with the day before on the street were lying dead right after, the day after? And I survived. Why were most of the people in the forest didn't survive? And we did. in the same village where we were hiding for 2 years. Didn't speak about that yet. But in the village where we were hiding, on the other side of the village, there was another family, Jewish family, and they were hiding, also at the farmer's market. Somehow, somebody talked, they found them, and they killed them, killed the whole family. They came, and they shot the whole family, the Jewish family, and then they shot the whole family of the Ukrainian farmer.
Who was hiding them?
That was hiding them. And that was the way to scare the people not to save Jews.
So saving Jews meant risking your life.
Correct. Risking your life. Now, when we were in the cave for 2 years, so the first year we were able to come out and in the middle of the night, very quietly walk around in the yard of the farmer's house. And just for half an hour or an hour of just walking around and getting some nice air. That was the first year. The second year, when that thing happened, the farmer got very scared. He had a wife and 3 kids. And so he said, no, sorry, can't come out at all. So the last year that we were there, we never came out of the cave.
Wow. What was
Now that's what you call quarantine.
We're all kvetching about 2 weeks, and you
2
couldn't
years.
come out of the cave for 2 years. 2 years.
2 years.
Wow.
Till 44. From 42 to
What
40.
did you do all day?
That's also not only because the 3 of us, me and my parents, my aunt and uncle, who were both doctors, and my cousin, who was 3 years old at the time when we got into the cave. So the 3 of them, so we were 6 people in that cave. A cave that we dug ourselves together with the farmer. And then we were there.
What did you do?
Okay. They were both doctors. And when we went to the ghetto, they didn't go because they were the only doctors in town. And they needed it for the Ukrainian population. But also the Germans wanted them for their own sake. They needed a doctor and they were getting sick. So they were privileged and they stayed in our town of Mielnitsa, where I was born. But when
It's okay, you have to take it.
No. But when, where was I? Yes. So they were privileged to stay in that place. But when they finally had closed the ghetto, they liquidated the ghetto, they were going to liquidate all the people that were working for them, such as doctors and nurses and people that worked for them, maybe engineers or whatever. They had people doing carpenters, plumbers, whatever. They were going to get rid of all of these. Most of them were sent to Treblinka, to the camp, extermination camp. So their life now was very, very dangerous. So they started to look for another place, and they found us that actually my uncle, by the way, I said both of them were doctors. He was treating a little kid, and the father of that kid, my uncle asked him, maybe we can hide somewhere. I'll find you a place. And he did.
That's where the
That's where we were hiding.
in the cave.
Yes.
But
He
and what
decided
did
to
you
bring us
do
in.
when 2
Okay.
years in the cave?
So
what did
when
you do?
we went there, we didn't have much to bring with us. But they had time, a little bit of time. So they brought some of their books. For instance, their medical books. They brought some other books, Polish, Ukrainian, and so on. And my father, the only thing he brought was a little sitter. We had to keep that kid of 3 years old. A 3-year-old doesn't want to be quiet. They want to yell and do things. So in order to make her quiet, the parents, my uncle and my father and my mother, were teaching her how to read. 3 years old. So they took a book and they would say, we told them the letters. She had to learn the letters. And then for months it was going on. Ba, pu, le, la, lo, pu, pi, until she started to put the letters together to make words. Okay? And she was busy with that. She liked it. She wanted to read. And so they taught her in Polish and in Ukrainian, which is a different alphabet, the Russian alphabet. Okay. And my father was teaching her to read from the Siddur. Same thing. When she got tired of one, took another one. And so he had on him the.
So the whole time you're just occupying this 3-year-old.
Yeah, but the truth is we didn't have much.
What was her
The
name?
The farmer would once in 2 weeks or so would bring us a newspaper. Would bring us a newspaper. So we knew that the front was coming closer to us because the Russians were pushing you,
Wow.
back.
So that was how you had your information.
So we knew something was going on. It could have been it could have been something from 2 weeks before,
Right.
but it was enough to give us an idea
What was happening?
where the front was.
What was your cousin's name?
Deutsch.
I was saying, what was the girl's name? What was her?
Oh, Eva.
Eva.
Eva is my cousin. She's not 3 years old anymore. She was 6 years younger than me. I was 9 and she was 6. She was.
Where did she
3.
live?
I'm sorry, they were in Montreal.
Oh, wow.
Today, that little girl is a world-renowned geneticist.
Well, the only books she had were medical books.
No, she was brilliant student, and she was at McGill when she was 16 or something.
Wow.
And so, well, if we want to finish now with this,
it's okay. I want to get to one more story
Yeah.
before we
because I want to tell
finish
you
it.
the story how we finally left, and also what happened to the people that saved us.
Yeah. So I'd like to hear that story, and I want to hear the story of the barn. and when you were almost found?
You mean the shed?
The shed.
I can explain it very well. Let me get a piece of paper.
Sure.
Okay. We were in a shed. So, we found out that this was when they liquidated the ghetto. Some guys cut the wire, Jewish guys, and people were running out. And some of them ended up in the forest. Okay, so now, imagine there was this wire, and then, and when you cut the wire, on the other side of the wire was a road that was going. And people were running out. The Germans found out that there was a breach in the wire and people were running away. So they came with 2 trucks with machine guns that were on the top of the trucks, one on each side of the street where that wire was cut. And as people were running through, the machine guns were just going like that, just mowing down them. So the street on the other side was full of dead people. This was the time when we separated because everybody was pushing to get out. And there were thousands of people. Everybody was pushing. That's where we separated. Another uncle and aunt were together. We were together pushing also to get out. My father and my uncle made it across. My mother and I and my aunt, another sister of my mother, an aunt and a cousin, whose name was Hewlett. We were further back because we separated. People were pushing. By the time we came to the wire, my mother looked down at what was happening. She saw all these dead people. Machine guns were working, and she said, "We'll never make it. Let's go back." And so we went back to find a place to hide. And so, at the back of a building, there was an old shed where people would throw out things. The shed, and as I said, this is the shed. I'm doing both sides music. So the shed was here, and it was separated in the middle not with a wall, but with just planks of wood going from the top to the bottom. And there was like between each plank, maybe 3, 4, 5 inches from each other. So it wasn't, okay, so now what happened was my mother and my aunt decided to go back. So we find that shed, and in the shed, there was stuff that people were throwing out. So on one side of the shed, there were 2 huge basins, because in those days, they were washing by hand, and no machines, especially in that area of the world. So there were these big, huge, round basins. And so my aunt and my cousin went on this side They turned over the basin, put it on top of them. My hand was very small, so was my mother. Maybe 5 footers at most. So so they turned over the basins, put it on top of them. Okay, and we're lying under those things, very quiet. My mother and I went. So that was this side. My mother and I were on this side. There were 2 huge, big mattresses made out of straw. In those days, they were doing it out of straw. So there was a mattress here and another mattress here. And here was let's say this is the door. Okay, and this is the shed. So the mattress was lying here, and I was lying over here near the door. After about maybe what sounded like 2 months, it actually was probably 2 hours later. 2 hours later, 2 policemen, Ukrainian Nazi SS division, that had a whole division of killers. That's all they did. They killed in Ukraine, and then they even brought them to Poland to do their thing over there. The worst kind of killers. I'll tell you a story about this later when we get through. So, we're here, we're all lying. The 2 of us, my mother and myself here, and my cousin is there, and my aunt is over here. So 2 guys came, one was standing outside, the other one came inside. The first thing he did was he lifted, if this is the basin, with his rifle, he lifted this up, okay, because they turned it over. So he lifted it up, saw my cousin, shot him right there. And then he went to this side up on top, where my aunt was lying, under the other basin, and shot her right there. Now, I just want to tell you, so that you'll understand. As I said before, that wasn't a real wall in between us. So we heard everything that was going on. The shooting of both of these, my mother's sister and her son, my cousin. So now they're finished with this side. They come over on the other side. One guy is standing here. The other guy goes inside. Here is the mattress for me, and here is the mattress for my mother. Okay? The guy comes with his rifle, and he lifts up this corner. I was lying on the diagonal. So my feet were here, and my head was here, like that. He lifts up that corner of the mattress. He lifts up this corner. He doesn't see me. And he turns to the other guy and he says, there's nobody else here. Let's get the hell out of here. So that's about the closest I came to dying. The only other thing that I can add to this is when they shot my aunt and my cousin on the other side, they didn't die right away. So we were lying there very quiet, even after they left. And I can remember my mother saying, "Shh, not a word. Don't move." But we were listening to these two people. They were not dead. They were still, what's the word? We could hear him in pain until it was silence. We stayed there, my mother and I, until it was nighttime. When it was nighttime, we ran to the wire that was cut because we had to get out. We couldn't stay there anymore. We had to do something. So we got out. We got out there, and this is when we went into the fields that I told you about, and from there into the forest.
Wow.
And from there to the village and to that farmer's house.
And the cave.
2 years.
Wow. Wow.
I went through a few things.
A few things. It's even hard to catch my breath after hearing that. Wow.
Yeah. And I want you to understand, see, this young lady is listening to, that my story is not on the highest level by any means. There's probably 2 levels of hardships and survival stories. People that were, for instance, in concentration camps. Like I told you about that cousin that I have. And some of the people that work with me together at we tell our stories. That's what we do. On a daily basis. We tell it to from grade 6 to university level. And everybody has a different story. There's no 2 stories the same, because you may call it God's help, or you can call it luck, whatever you want to call it. That's what it took to survive.
What if he took his rifle and picked up the mattress on the other side? It's mind-boggling.
Exactly.
What if?
Yes.
Wow.
I knew of stories from survivors where they took him to they did in my town as well. You see, they made these big, huge graves going from one side to the other. And then they would line up people, okay, which is what they did during those pogroms, during these massacres. And they would line up people, and then on the other side were the guys with the guns. They would just line them up, shoot them, and then they would just throw them into the grave. This was going on all over Europe, okay? But this particular guy, he lived in Poland, just outside Lodz. They had that's the killing place, And they had machine gun. The machine gun was just going, here was a lineup of people. They lined you up and you fell into the grave, or they pushed you. It was going, and he was like with a whole bunch of people, and the machine guns were going, and people were falling in, but nothing happened to him. He didn't even get a bullet or anywhere near him. But what he did is he fell down on the ground. So they didn't know he was dead. And why?
Why?
Why me? Why am I saved? understanding and what I think about it is that maybe, just maybe, I survived with God's help so that I can come here and talk to a young lady like this, and I talk to a rabbi like this,
And all the people watching.
and all the people that were going to see it, to understand why there's no answer to it. It's luck. Nothing but luck. Because if he would have lifted the other corner, I would be dead, and so would be my mother.
Wow. I have one last very difficult question for you.
Yeah.
What do you say to the deniers? It's becoming so common today, so many years later, as you get older.
Okay.
What do you say to the people who deny it?
First of all, deniers are anti-Semites. Let's get that straight. They are nothing but anti-Semites. They hide it under the business of a denier. No, that never happened. And I tell that to all the people that I see, on a daily, I say daily basis. I probably do it like 2 a week. I average maybe a little more. And they speak to hundreds of kids and also adults. And I tell them that everybody has a story, and most of the time, everybody's story is different. And everybody survived somewhere along the line because of luck. Because otherwise they would be in Auschwitz. They took thousands, 1.5 million. This is the other thing I tell them. 6 million people perished, of which there was 1.5 million kids, children. So imagine Montreal for a moment. And you have one kid that gets captured or somebody kills him or something happens. Okay, he gets killed and he dies. The outcry that happens in the city, the whole province, and the cops get involved, and the courts get involved, and everybody, and it's a humongous tragedy, which it is. Now multiply this by 1.5 million children.
Wow.
Many times when I go back and think about some of the events, I don't believe them. I keep thinking, that didn't happen. I'm just dreaming that. But I'm not, because my parents were, and they felt the same way. But it's hard to imagine that a person or any of the survivors that you see, how do you get through with this? Now, I go back of why did I survive? And I like to think that with God's help, maybe I survived so that I can sit here and tell my story.
I have to ask one more question.
Okay.
Just one more.
We'll forgive you, right? Okay.
I'm tearing up and just almost short of breath just listening to your story right now.
Right.
How do you tell it twice a week? How do you relive this twice a week?
Survivors, all of us, didn't speak about our survival for many, many years. 25, 30. Never spoke about it.
You never
When
spoke
we
about
came
it.
here.
You never said a word.
Nobody talked about it. None of the survivors. Nobody talked about it.
Why?
There were two reasons. First of all, when we came here, we lived in the Jewish community. The Jewish community didn't want to hear it. Our neighbors did not want to hear it. That's one reason.
They didn't believe it, or they just didn't want to hear it?
They didn't want to hear it. Did they believe it? They knew there was something going on there, but not that much. But they didn't want to know the rest. The second reason, and the most important reason, is that survivors wanted to get back into life, into a normal life. Here in Canada, they started to live a regular life. Like I had to go to school. My parents were both working. We had rented a house on the 3rd floor with a walk-up all the way. Today I wouldn't make it. But and we lived over there, and it was fine. It was fine because it was much better than what we had prior. Okay, so they didn't want to talk about it. Eventually, when we got a little older, especially the older people, older than me, I'm talking about, which I can't find today. Nobody is older than me. So so they started to talk about it. Let me put it to you this way. I went to a yeshiva. Of course, they were all Jewish kids. For 4 years. For 4 years that I was there, I did high school over there. Nobody asked me about how did you survive.
And they knew you were from...
Absolutely, they knew. I couldn't speak English. I couldn't speak French. It took me 6 months to catch up to the class, to learn. And that was another thing that I had to do. But nobody ever asked me. And there were 2 of us in my class, 2 survivors. Another guy, Moshe Werner. You know who Moshe Werner is?
Yeah.
He's the rabbi in Shul on Van Horn.
Yeah.
He was in my class.
Wow.
Okay? Moshe Werner was there. I was very in yeshiva, just to tell you. I know you always tell me I should be what I am, but I almost decided to go for it.
To be a rabbi.
He was ahead of me about 2 years.
Did he ever ask you your story? Did you ever ask him his story? Did survivors speak amongst themselves?
No.
Wow.
Because in those years, when we were together, nobody spoke about it. Everyone wanted to go on with his life. Work, get married, go to school, whatever a person needed to go on with life. You couldn't just think about it. Now the other answer to the question. How do I do it now? Because 6 years ago, I went to the March of the Living. I had been to Auschwitz before, but this time I saw Treblinka and some of the other camps. And I got older also, by that time. So I decided that, and I started telling the story to the there were 110 or 120 kids.
That was the first time you told the story.
So I started telling the story, and I told it to my kids before.
Right.
They knew about it.
The first time you told it publicly.
Yes. So I started telling the story as we traveled from one place to another in Poland. And I spoke to the kids. And when I came back, I had a friend of mine who had been telling stories, the survivor, and I called him up and I said, I want to do this. I tell my students and my people that I have a mission. I have a mission in life, a responsibility that I have to tell my story so that you people will know what it means to have a Holocaust and what a Holocaust can do, what people can do to other people. And I tell them that, and I tell them, this is my obligation. I have to tell you what happened in the past. And I tell them at the same time that you have an obligation too. And I tell them your obligation is like if you hear a witness, you become a witness. Your obligation is to make sure, number one, is that there's not going to ever be a kind of a Holocaust again. That's number one. Number two, you must fight anti-Semitism. If you're in school and you're going to be at the university, you're going to find deniers. You're going to find anti-Semites. You have to do something about it. You've got to tell them that what they say about deniers is terrible. Not only is it false, but it's horrible to even say that it didn't happen. And you're also going to tell them that you met a guy that was really there. So don't give me any baloney. And I've been doing it since I came back from there.
I remember I was sitting in your home
Yes.
the day before you left in the March of the Living.
And
The day before you left to the
Left?
March of the Living,
oh yeah.
I was in your home.
Okay.
And I knew nothing of the story. I knew that you were a survivor. I knew that, but I knew nothing of the story. I only heard your story afterwards.
So the two of you, and I'm including this young lady
What about the camera?
and the camera, all of you, you must keep the story alive. Not for any other reason, but to know what the past was and what it can be. When we look today and we see the anti-Semitism at the highest point since that disaster happened. There is also the fact that as far as we Jews are concerned, this is the greatest tragedy that has befallen the Jewish people. Without anything that you can mention, and we've had all kinds of killings and pogroms and different things thrown out of this country and that country, and every country at one point threw us out and so on. And we survived. We all survived. But we have to remember that this is the greatest tragedy that happened to the Jewish people ever. Probably one of the greatest tragedies that has befallen mankind in history. And that's why we have to tell the story. That's why I have to tell the story.
Wow. Wow. You know, what's amazing to me, and you're an unbelievable inspiration, but more than all of the inspiration that I get from you is the fact that after everything you've gone through, you still believe in God, but even more so, you still have a joy for davening and for praying. And when you pray, even just before when I was watching you sing and pray the Kol Nidre, it's from your heart, it's real, it's connected, it's your voice and your heart connected, and that after everything you have gone through, you still have this joy. You can still come into a shul, wear a yarmulke. It's an unbelievable thing. I know that for you, you just take it for granted, but it's amazing, really amazing.
The other day I told you I'm becoming a Chabadnik, and you said, no, you have to stay the way you are.
But
I think I probably will stay the way I am.
You're good the way you are.
So
we like you the way you are.
So I won't spoil the Chabad movement altogether.
It's nothing to do. We're all one. It has nothing to do with you or them, us and them. We're all one.
And that's why I am inspired by you. I am inspired by you because you can look at any kind of a Jew, or probably any person. Come into my tent. Come into my tent and eat. Come in my tent and sing. Come into my tent and pray.
Yeah.
If you want. If you don't want, just sit and look.
Yeah.
And that's what makes you special. And as I tell my friends, he's my hero.
You're my hero. You're my hero.
No.
I want to tell everyone, I'm going to push the camera out a second. Back to, because we were being socially distanced.
Okay.
I want to tell everyone, just give me 1 second. I'm just going to take off the mask. I want to tell everyone the story behind the tent. So Rosh Hashanah, this beautiful tent. Now Yom Kippur, we're going to be doing Kol Nidre, and I can't wait to hear your Kol Nidre from your heart to Hashem, direct, under the stars.
Hopefully,
I want to
it's
tell.
not going to cold.
No, it's not going to be cold. Hashem's going to take care of us. And anyway, you told me in the forest it was cold and it was raining. This is better. We have a shelter.
Okay, you're going to talk then. Because I was going to, but I think
No. Hold on a second. Wait.
You're going to be better.
Your connection is much better than mine.
No.
Your connection is much better. That's it. I give over. You're talking to God about it.
No, you're closer than me.
Look, in the forest, you had the same cold and rain without the shelter. We have shelter too.
Okay.
How bad could it be?
We're going to try.
So I'll tell you the inspiration behind the tent. Fishel, you called me. And at the time, we weren't sure what we were going to do for Yom Kippur. And the thought was, I knew that we couldn't do anything inside. We thought maybe we'll do a little minyan inside, socially distanced, 10 people. And for everyone else, we'll figure out some kind of situation. And we had all these different options that we were figuring out, visit people in their homes and send a package so they can do Yom Kippur by themselves. And then you said that even in the ghetto, you didn't miss a Rosh Hashanah, and you don't know what you're going to do this year because your doctor told you that you cannot daven inside with all the people. And so...
Dr. Krebs.
Yeah, no, before Dr. Krebs.
Oh, before, yeah.
Yeah, you told me that your doctor said that
Yeah.
you couldn't daven inside because too many people.
Correct.
And so I didn't know what I was going to do because I wanted to make a tent. Then it happens to be I just moved, and my direct neighbor, is a Muslim, and he was the past president of the mosque right behind my home on Belgrave and Demazenev. And he was telling me that he had a holiday coming up, and that he's an older man, and that his doctor told him that he couldn't go into the mosque
Right.
to pray, and he didn't know what he was going to do because he's never missed. And I heard from you, and I heard from this man, and you're about the same age, both of you, very young.
That old, eh? Okay.
And I thought to myself, I have an idea. So I said to him, can you give me the number to the imam or to the current president? So I called the current president, and he came to meet with me. And I said, let's make a deal. We will pay for the tent. You have the space, because they have a big parking lot.
Right.
The only parking lot, basically, the only open space that's within this area.
Right.
There's not that many open spaces.
No.
They have the only open space. I said, you'll provide the space, and we'll put up the tent. And we'll both use it. You'll have your holiday, so this young gentleman can enjoy his holiday. We'll have our holiday, so this young gentleman here can enjoy his holiday, and everyone will be happy. Anyway, he had to speak to the board and back and forth. It was a little bit of negotiation. Rabbi Yosh had to get involved to make sure that everything was going well. But to make a long story short, this tent that we have here has actually happened because of you and this man and this collaboration between two faiths, between the Muslim faith and the Jewish faith, that allowed this experience for us. And so I think it's an amazing story.
I also helped a little bit when you have to move out, remember?
Yes. You know. But what I'm saying is that for this Yom Tov, the fact that we can all come together, I think it's a beautiful story.
Yes. For
COVID. I haven't really told it publicly.
You should.
I think I should tell it publicly because I think it's a beautiful story during this time that everyone is distanced. The fact that we can all come together and help each other. Imagine you came to a place like Canada where 70 years ago, you're trying to figure out in a huddling for Yom Kippur in a room in a ghetto. And here we have faiths coming together that are able to provide a Yom Kippur experience. And just the contrast. And I always have to focus on the positive because the contrast is so incredible. So incredible.
Well, as I said, it's my duty. I need to help our own people,
and all people,
the Jewish nation,
and all people,
all people. I do 90% of my speaking, and when I tell my story, 90% is French.
Wow, you tell your story in French.
90%.
Wow. How many languages do you know?
A few. A whole bunch.
I'm counting five that I know of. Wow.
Well, 6, 7.
Not so many.
You know, that's not many. I tell my students, one of the questions I get at the end, when they have questions, they say, because I traveled and said, how many languages do you speak? So I tell them, I don't know, about 6 or 7, whatever. So, wow, that's a lot. I say, no, in the world there are 200 languages. You speak 6 or 7, it's nothing.
It's not even 5%.
That's right. So I get a kick of really speaking to the young students and I'm very thankful to God that I have a situation where in all the years that I've spoken to different groups, especially students, and these are 16, 17-year-olds, 15-year-olds, and that they can destroy the class, and where you stand and tear out the walls. But when I speak, they listen quietly and have questions.
Wow.
Most of the time.
Wow.
The biggest surprise that I ever had is just, on the other side of Ottawa, the Ottawa River. Gatineau. Over there, I was invited to do a class. Then she calls me and she says, well, I have one more class. Maybe I'll combine them. So instead of you'll have 40 kids, you'll have 80 kids. Okay, fine, no problem. You can speak to anybody, from 5 people to more. Okay. So Lorna and I go to Ottawa. My granddaughter lives there, and so then we go across. And I come into the school, and I was late. I couldn't find where the school was. Anyway, a mindset. But so finally, I get to the school. Get to the school. They bring me into They have a hall, a big. They use it as a theater. They teach theater in the school. So they have a big auditorium. So I come in there and I open the door and it's full of people. Okay? I had to count. So I say, what's happening here? Oh, I forgot to tell you. We decided to do the whole school. 260 kids.
And they all sat and listened.
Huh?
They all sat and listened to you.
All sat. I was standing on the stage. They had a stage. And I was standing on the stage. And it was quiet. You didn't hear a drop.
Wow.
For what am I saying? There were 400 kids, 420 or something. 420 kids.
Wow. Wow.
Okay? So
Wow.
that was really something. The most questions that I had, and very intense, was I spoke at the University of Sherbrooke. Big, huge. They have like 50,000, 60,000 students. It's a whole complex just outside of Sherbrooke. So I spoke to a class. They were training to be teachers in high school. So they were working on their masters, but they were training to be teachers. So they were very knowledgeable because they had to learn their history and this thing. So they really asked very, very difficult questions, some of which we talked today and others,
Amazing.
And that's what I do.
I still have this moment. It must have been about 4 or 5 years ago that I invited you to my Rosh Hashanah table.
Yes.
I don't remember, for some reason you were able to come. I invited you a few times, but I think even the kids, I don't know, something happened with the kids, but you decided to come and I was shocked. And when you walked in, you saw my Rosh Hashanah table, wasn't a few people. If you remember.
Okay, so now you think, now you only come here for the food.
It's okay, you're not the only one who just comes for the food. And then I had this.
Maybe it's just the show.
The cholent.
Maybe that's what.
And I had this. You lifted the glass and you made the kiddush, Rosh Hashanah, and opening Rosh Hashanah, and then you turned around and there was all types of people, right? Jewish, not Jewish. And,
that's right. I was sitting
in the middle. You were in the middle in the room.
Yeah, but Lorna was there too.
Yes, Lorna was with you, of course.
And there were people from Ecuador.
That's right.
And there were people, so of course I spoke Spanish.
Yeah, you were. So and then you turned around speaking all different languages.
Yeah. But and I remember the people I spoke to. But you have here people that come on a regular basis that are
Oh yeah, no,
Spanish
absolutely.
speaking.
But I'm saying
I'm from
you
Argentina.
were looking at the Russians, and you were speaking in Russian, and in Spanish, and in French, and in that, and before the Kiddush, you just make this like this speech in a bunch of different languages, and welcomed everyone for the new year. And for me, that was a moment to watch you usher in the new year. Was a very special moment.
When I always like to speak to people in their own language, if I can. That I enjoy it. Okay.
And you're able to.
Most of the time, it's not going as good as this. I actually did it in Hebrew for a class from Concordia.
And how was?
I had some problems with certain technical words. So we made a deal. I said, look guys, I'm going to do this. I really didn't want to, I didn't know if I could still do it. When I was in the DP camp for 2 years, we had this magnificent school. And we were living in barracks, in the American zone, 1946. It was still the American zone of Germany. Actually, it was not too far from Munich. So that's where I learned Hebrew. I mean, the sitter was always, had that since I was.
Right, but that's where you learned to speak Hebrew.
But here to speak. So, and I spoke it extremely well at that time. And it was fine, but so the guy that called me, I heard that by the accent that in English that he was an Israeli. So we started right away to speak.
How can you tell?
Yes. So so I realized it. So we started to speak. And he had called the Holocaust Center, and they told him to call me. Okay. Then he explained it. So we were talking on the phone. So we started speaking Hebrew. He calls me back. And I said, yeah, sure, I'll do it. No problem. They have a group that they belong actually to Hillel, but from different classes. They had a group there of about 25, 30. They were all Israelis. All Israelis. So he calls me back and he says, I don't want you to do it in English. I said, you want French? He says, no, I want you to do it in Hebrew. Now, wait a minute. Just a second. I'm not so sure I can manage that. How do you say Hashem? I don't know.
Hashem.
So how do you say that? I don't know. So I have certain other things. First of all, some that I never knew, and some that I forgot. I mean, it's only been 70-something years.
That's it.
I mean, you forget a little bit when I was in the DP camp. So I said, but I'll make a deal with you guys. I'll do it. But if I come to a place, I will continue in English. Wherever I have a difficulty, I'll continue with English. You don't have to. We'll tell you the word. So never mind. So I did it, but I stopped several times.
It was Hebrew. It was Cambridge. Cambridge, whatever. It was.
So I stopped. I just changed very quickly into English and back into Hebrew.
Wow.
Yeah.
So before we conclude,
yes,
we promised the people some songs from the Ghetto, and we ask you to do some songs from the Ghetto.
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to stand up without my mask.
Okay. Could you?
Wow. Just to give you an idea, we've already been on for 2.5 hours.
You can't make a
Why not?
video of 2.5 hours.
That's the beauty of being live. It just goes. Okay, let's get you set up over here. Look at this.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I love how you need a stender in order to be able to sing.
You have to do that. So I'm going to do 2 songs that are songs that were written in the ghetto and performed in the ghettos, in Lodz Ghetto and Ghetto from Lodz and Ghetto from Vilna, and so on. So the first one is called Ghetto. That's the name of the song, Ghetto. This was written by a composer by the name of Kasriel Brody in the Vilna Ghetto. Okay? Wir stehen bei die Wand, mit Herzen, mit verklemmte, mit herabgeloste Hand, wie bei ein weinendiger Werbe. Es gucken Augen starr und sinken ein tief in der Weitkeit. Uns bleibt in See der Zar die Ewigkeit. Schwer zu sehen die Welt durch enge Mauern, die Schein verstellt, die Ghetto teuren. Vermachst die Augen nur, dann siehst du alles wie nach Holland. Es erscheint wie auf der Welt die große Welt. Ghetto, dir vergessen will ich keinmal nicht. Echo ist dein herzige, dein treurig Lied. Ich seh du deine Tränen, dein Lumet, dein Pein, hör du dein Gebet, was wird sein, was wird sein. In deine Ghetto-Gessler ist mir ein, das Herz so betrieb. Und was verstehst du weh, doch ist mir so lieb. Ghetto, dich vergessen will ich keinmal nicht. And now in English. We're standing by the walls with heartbreak lost, defenseless, with hands that hang and fall, just like the weeping willow branches. Into void eyes stare, peering blindly through the denseness. Only pain there. The infinite pain. Hard to view the world, to crowded dwellings, tall gates of ghetto walls, all light dispelling. Yet when you close your eyes, then everything appears like dreaming, and you almost surmise the great wide world. Ghetto, in my memory, you'll never die. My lament is your heartfelt and your mournful song. I see all your weeping, your sadness I see. I hear all your pleas, what will be, what will be. In your ghetto alleys there's no room, sadness the heart sustains. And although I know the hurt, the love always remains. Ghetto, in my memory, you'll never die.
Wow.
So, let me bring the other song. So again, we're going to do this also. It's a song that was written in the ghetto. I'm going to do this partly in Yiddish and partly in English. Mach zu die Egelach, ot kommen Fegelach, und kreisen da herum, zu Koppens von dein Weg. Das Päckl in der Hand, das Haus in Asch und Brand. Wir losen sich, mein Kind, suchen Glück. Now close your little eyes, soon little birds will fly and sing in circles everywhere. They'll flutter by your bed, your head upon your hand, the house in ash and sand. We leave, my darling child, in search of life. Die Welt hat Gott vermacht, und umetum ist Nacht. Sie wartet auf uns mit Scheude und mit Schreck. Wir stehen beide da in schwerer Schau. Und weiß nicht wohin, es führt der Weg. God has the world withdrawn. The black night fills each dawn. She waits for us with horror and with dread. We both are standing here with terror always near, not knowing where or where our road has led. Men hat uns nacket bloß verjagt von unser Haus, in Finsternis getrieben uns im Feld. In Sturm, Hagelwind hat uns begleit, mein Kind, begleit uns in dem Abgrund von der Welt. Stripped naked we were thrown, erased from our loving home. the darkest night to the open field. In Sturm Hagelwind hat uns begleit mein Kind, begleit uns in dem Abgrund von der Welt.
I think it's a great way to end our program. Any last words?
I enjoyed very much being with you and with the young lady. I hope you can spread the word, and maybe the camera will spread the rest. And so we have to recognize of what happened. And one of the things that I always say, and I show some pictures of some of the stories. I had an artist do some pictures of showing the shed and some of the other things. So I showed that, but I also have pictures that I show when I was 5 years old and 6 years old and so on. And then towards the end, I show my whole family. So now there's a whole gang. I have 4 children, 7 grandchildren, and I show I have one picture of everybody. And I say, when I look back, no matter what they done to us, we won. Hitler and his killers lost. We're still here. We're all here. And we are as good as we ever been. We are full. We won. He lost. And that's the story.
And we're sealed in the book of life.
And that's right. And we're going on with the book of life. The book of life that's been going on for a long, long time. 3,500 years or something. We're still here. No matter what they do to us, we will be here. We're here to stay. Thank you.